Hello people of the internet, and welcome to a video teaching you how to be okay at Galactic Civilizations 3. As you may know, this game is about to be free on the Epic Game Store for a limited time, which means I can make my friends play with me since they can no longer say, I'm not spending money on something I might not even like. So, I've set out to make this video to help you, my friends, have an enjoyable Gal Civ experience. To get started, we're going to begin a new game and select a civilization. In this case, I'm going to go with the Terran Alliance, your standard humans. Next, we can set the parameters of the game. You can mess around with galaxy size, map makeup, game difficulty, victory conditions, as well as selecting your opponents. Each faction has their own strengths and weaknesses, but if you find none of them are to your liking, you can always make your own. The game begins with us above our home planet. We have a shipyard and a single ship. As we zoom out, we can see the remainder of the galaxy. Each dot represents a distant star that we can eventually visit. Surrounding our home star, we can see several planets. In addition to our home world, there are 3 empty or dead worlds which we are unable to colonize, and 1 Class 6 world where we can build our first colony. Before we get started with deciding humanity's fate, we should explore the UI. Starting at the top left, just to the right of the menu button, we have the resource bar. The resource bar is currently displaying how much money we have, our population, food resources, as well as administration points. Right below the resource bar, there are several tabs which we can use to manage our civilization, and below that is the research menu. In the upper right hand corner, we can see a high-level overview about how our civilization compares to our opponents, in addition to seeing how our population feels about us. In the lower left hand corner, we are able to manage whatever planet, starbase, or ships we currently have selected. And finally, in the lower right hand corner, we have the recommended actions button, which also serves as a turn button. To be honest, you can avoid most of the UI elements, since the recommended action button will open whatever menu you should be messing with at any given time, but I suggest clicking around, since I glanced over about 90% of what's going on here. Now it's time to actually start playing, so where do we begin? Well, we can start with the ever so helpful recommended action button. Currently it's telling us to research, so let's do that. By hitting that button, or the dedicated research button, we can bring up the research screen. Here we can research the technologies we need to conquer the galaxy. These techs are broken up into 4 tech trees: colonization, engineering, warfare, and culture, which you can see by selecting the tech tree in the lower left-hand portion of the research page. Early on, I suggest that you research the Universal Translator from the Cultural Tech Tree. This will allow you to talk and trade with other civilizations, as well as colonial administration and colonial settlement from the colonization tech tree. This will allow you to build factories on your colonies to decrease build times. Next we have colonial management. The recommended action button will let you know when you have an idle colony, or you can simply check on a planet you control by double-clicking on it. On the colony screen, you can see all of your usable tiles, outlined in green. Some of these tiles are reserved for resource collection, and others are open for anything you can place on them. On the right hand side of the page, you can also see the buildings which you are able to construct. Now we have to decide where to place our first building. To do this, we need to determine the best tile to place it, or we can just wing it. Either way, every building you place has the potential to affect the ones adjacent to it. In the case of our civilization capital, it levels up just about anything placed next to it and is leveled up in the same fashion. Similarly, some tiles can level up buildings placed onto or adjacent to them. This is noted by an icon on the bottom of that tile's hexagon. Just hover over the tile or building to see what effect it has on its surroundings. In an effort to move quickly, I'm going to start with an industrial center to jumpstart my manufacturing. To queue a building, simply select a free tile and then double click on the building you want to place there. In the case of my industrial center, I'm going to instantly build it by highlighting the manufacturing queue and selecting the rush button. This costs money, but in exchange I don't have to wait 5 turns for it to finish, and I can start constructing a new building, so I'll get my computer core started. Next we need to start building ships. In this case I want to establish a colony on Mars and other nearby planets, so I'll start with a colony ship. Other early game ships include constructors, which can build starbases, scouts, which can explore unseen space, explorers, which can also explore but also survey nearby anomalies, which can provide bonuses to our civilization. Just keep in mind your civilization's ships and buildings may have different names, but they all serve the same purpose. Just read their subtext and find out more. Much like our industrial center back on Earth, I'm going to rush our first colony ship in order to expedite my civilization's growth. Finally, we have to move our idle ships. We started out with a surveying type ship which can search for anomalies. Ships are moved by selecting them and then right-clicking on the tile you want to move them to. Their travel distance is limited by their move stat. As we research better technologies, this can be increased on future ships. Ship's job is to search for anomalies, as seen here, or in this case, just space junk. Either way, just like before, we can tell our ship to head toward it by right-clicking on its tile. Additionally, if we find stuff like this to be too much work, it usually is, you can automate this task by selecting Command in the lower left-hand portion of your screen with your surveying ship selected, and then selecting Survey. This sums up a turn in Galactic Civilizations. Each turn you need to research, manage your planet, build ships, and send your ships out to do stuff. Once you have completed everything, the recommended action button will then say turn, allowing you to advance to the next turn. Once you end your turn, your remaining ships will move towards their destination. You may then have to manage additional ships as they reach their destination and still have remaining moves, followed by the AI taking their turns. As the game advances, this will take longer and longer, so just have patience while the AI does their thing. Our next turn begins with our newly completed colony ship being ready for colonists. We currently have a population of 5 on Earth. Each planet must have at least a population of 1, and each colony ship must carry a population of 1 as well. I can then take this new colony ship and send it off towards a planet, in this case Mars. Once it reaches its destination, it will found our first colony. In addition to population concerns, each colony ship, survey ship, and constructor consumes an administrator. Once these admins are consumed, they do not automatically replenish. To replenish administrators, special buildings like administration centers can be built. Additionally, administrators can be replenished through research. Now that our colony ship has reached its destination, we can begin to build structures in the same way we did back on Earth. Since we have nothing but a colonial capital, it's going to take much longer to build everything here. Additionally, our options are limited since some buildings can only be built once per player. In this case, I'm going to start with the Colonization Center since it will level up manufacturing and increase population growth. Personally, I like to focus on manufacturing in the early game since it allows me to push out ships faster when the AI decides it doesn't like me. In addition to everything else on the colony page, we have the Govern tab in the lower left-hand corner. This allows you to automate control of a planet. Here, you can allow the AI to build out your planets without any human intervention. Keep in mind that if you don't select anything, auto-upgrade improvements is turned on by default and can be annoying at times. Also, don't destroy your planets. Oh, you destroyed your planet. Well, that sucks. If you happen to have done that or encountered one of the many game-breaking glitches, I'm looking at you, United Planets Diplomacy Glitch. Ensure that you have autosave turned on, and set turns to 1 so the game saves at the end of every turn. Trust me, it's worth it. Now that we have colonized another planet, we need to worry about how to govern our domain. Here the game is nice enough to remind us to open the government screen and forces us to choose a governing style. Just remember each government type has its own pros and cons, and you're stuck with your choice for 26 turns. I decided to go with colonial over imperial for the social construction and growth buffs. On the downside, I do need to ensure my people like me, since there will be elections. After a few turns, you can see the tiles surrounding Earth have turned blue. This is because our influence is extending. Ideally, we want to extend our zone of control out as far as possible. This is accomplished by colonizing planets and improving them, in addition to building star bases. At this point, it may be beneficial to manage our finances. Currently, I have a little over 2,000 credits, but how many am I making per turn? You can check this out by hovering your cursor over the treasury on the resource bar, or by selecting civilization right below that and looking at the economy page. Currently, I am making 4 credits per turn with a tax rate of 34%. I can adjust this tax rate, but remember, higher taxes means more unhappy people, and unhappy people don't produce as much, so strive for a balance. This matters on both a civilization-wide and planetary scale. In addition to adjusting taxes, revenue can be increased with citizens, star bases, future research, and planetary improvements. After a turn or two, you may find some other weird stuff hanging out in space, such as mineable resources and precursor relics. In this case, I found a manufacturing relic, which I can build a starbase near to benefit from it. To do this, we need to build a constructor. Other mineable resources look like this. They can be used to build upgraded buildings and powerful ships. Once you get a constructor in range of an unused resource, you can build a starbase by clicking Command and then construct starbase in the lower left-hand portion of the screen if your constructor is selected. From here, you can select the type of starbase you want to build. To claim a precursor relic, like the one here, you need to build a xenoarchaeology lab. To build a mine, you need to build a mining barracks. Other types of starbases include military, cultural, and economic. These 3 non-mining starbases can provide buffs to the planets and ships they are in range of, like morale, planetary income, or attack power. Don't forget to come back and check your starbases as you research more technologies. You may have additional upgrades for them available. Oh, and don't forget to claim the asteroids in your zone of control too. They increase the production of nearby worlds. Every once in a while, the game will present you with a choice. This choice can provide you with anything from free ships, beneficial building resources, sometimes even a planet. These choices usually have an ideological consequence. As you make the decisions, your opponents will view you more or less favorably, depending on their ideological views. Ideology is broken up into 3 schools of thought, being good or benevolent, neutral or pragmatic, and finally evil or malevolent. As you make these decisions, you gain ideology points, which can be spent in the respective tech trees. As the game progresses, these decisions will have the power to boost your research output, stopping your opponents from declaring war on you, and even giving you free ships. After 10 turns, and every 10 turns afterwards, we will be able to train a citizen. There are various specializations to choose from. In the early game, you can trade admins to get additional administration points, workers to boost social construction, and scientists to boost research. These citizens can work for your civilization's government or can be stationed on individual planets. If a citizen is working for your civilization, it provides a boost to the whole civilization. For instance, if I choose a scientist and did not assign him or her to a planet, my whole civilization would get a 3% boost to research. But if I were to send that citizen to a planet, that planet instead gets a 30% boost to research. In the early game, I personally stationed scientists on my homeworld and able to increase my civilization's research. After some amount of time, you will run into another civilization, assuming you have researched the Universal Translator. Well, that's better. Anyways, at this point, you'll be able to trade with your fellow spacefaring civilizations. You can either initiate a trade with the AI, or they can seek you out. When trading with the AI, they will only trade with you if they think the value of the trade is at least equal for both sides, but equal depends on how much they like you, your diplomacy skill, and your strength with respect to them. When trading with another civilization, you can offer technologies, resources, planets, starbases, credits, and treaties in exchange for the same. You can see how much a civilization likes you by going to the diplomacy screen and hovering over an AI player, or by looking at the bar at the top of the trading menu. Personally, I like the deficit spend in the early game while trading technologies for credits to the AI to make up the difference, though this only works when you have multiple opponents. Finally, let's talk about offensive ships. For starters, all ships are built from a shipyard, which can be built from a nearby planet. Just remember, 1 shipyard per planet, but multiple planets can share a shipyard. Here you can see the ships that are available to build. There are 3 types of offensive weapons in the game: beam, missile, and kinetic weapons. Each weapon type has their own corresponding defensive technology to counter them. There is no de facto best type of ship, since the technologies your opponents research will determine the types of ships you should build to counter them. Just remember, you can station ships in orbit of a planet to defend it, or you can stack your ships into fleets to hunt down your opponents. Either way, this is just the beginning of a game of Gal Civ III. I've definitely glanced over a lot here, so take some time and play around with things. If you want to see me play this game and others like it, feel free to check me out on Twitch, link in the description. Until next time, feel free to like and subscribe, I guess. Bye.